So the Rockets trailed as many as 19 points before finishing the game on a 49-18 run over the final 14+ minutes, I'd say. Houston shot 54% over that span, with 8 of their 13 as three-pointers. The Clippers, meanwhile, couldn't buy a shot, shooting 19% over the same time span, about 14-30. They missed 15 of their final 16 shots. It's just the third time in NBA history that a team playing at home with a chance to clinch the playoff series blew a double-digit lead entering the fourth quarter. It was a collapse, as Stephen A. mentioned earlier. So break it down for us, my friend. What happened?
The Clippers choked. Let's call it what it is. This team just completely collapsed. Skip, I watched every moment of this game. I didn't miss a moment. I was shell-shocked at what I witnessed. I could not believe it. To have a 19-point lead, if you remember, I predicted, and boy, do I owe an apology to the Houston Rockets. I thought they were done. Not only did I predict they would lose this game, I thought they would get stomped. I thought they would get beat down. And they were getting beat down when the Clippers were up 89-70 with about 2 minutes left, 2 minutes and 15 seconds left in the third quarter. And then they had a 9-0 run to close the quarter, and then after that, they outscored the Clippers 40-15. Over a span of 10 minutes in the fourth quarter, the Clippers had 10 points. They couldn't buy a basket. They couldn't hit a shot. They seemed, literally, they got to a point where they were scared to shoot. You had Chris Paul having to try and do everything. You had Blake Griffin, who suddenly got exposed because, once again, he didn't do much in the fourth quarter. And it was one of those situations, Skip, where Blake Griffin, he overpowers a lot of guys. But what the Rockets started doing when Kevin McHale said, look, we're minus 23 with James Harden on the floor anyway, even though he hit all 11 of his free throws, he would shoot like 5 of 20 from the field. He put him on the bench in the fourth quarter, and the second unit, led by Corey Brewer, led by Josh Smith, who dropped 4 3-pointers, even though he actually started. When you look at what he was doing, I mean, Josh Smith stepping back, shooting threes, Corey Brewer shooting threes. I mean, I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. Dwight Howard grabbing every rebound under the sun. He finished with 21 for the night. I just looked at the Clippers, and their half-court offense was atrocious. You look at Blake Griffin, you know, backing guys down, trying to outmuscle them. You got guys like Pablo Prigioni sneaking in from behind to strip him. Jason Terry was doing the same thing. They were collapsing on him. He didn't know where anybody was. And it was about Chris Paul and Blake Griffin. It was almost as if no one else were allowed to think about shooting. It was that bad. But in the end, here's what it comes down to. Number one, my apologies to the Houston Rockets. Completely slept on them. They deserve credit. Kevin McHale deserves a boatload of credit. I mean, a league MVP candidate in James Harden, you know, one of the league's leading scorers. You bench him in the fourth quarter. Right. You go with Brewer and Josh Smith. That's a courageous move, man. Yep. And that's what Kevin McHale did. And Brewer and Josh Smith and those boys came through for him. They have now forced Game 7. And now I don't think we should be looking at Chris Paul because, again, he is what he is. Blake Griffin is the guy that has to step up and get it done, along with the rest of the crew, and dare I say even the great Doc Rivers. He's the master motivator. He's one of the top 2 coaches in the game. But the bottom line is that he's got a crew that can legitimately contend for a title. You don't go up 3-1 on the Houston Rockets and lose a game like you just lost in Game 6 and don't answer the bell for Game 7, and your reputation doesn't get stung by such a collapse. Doc Rivers has to step up too. Whatever buttons he's got to push to get these boys ready for Game 7, they have got to be ready, because if not, all the naysayers about the Clippers and all the chances they had of snatching L.A. even remotely from the claws of Laker Nation, and I'm not saying they were doing it, I'm just saying remotely, that will even go out the window if they blow this Game 7. There's a whole bunch of stuff on the line for the Clippers because of how they collapsed last night. It looked like a straight-up choke job. They've got to make amends for this.
Not sure they will. Last night, I also watched every last dribble of this game. because I couldn't turn it off. The Clippers turned back into the Clippers of old, the Clippers that Kerry Champion can't stomach the other team, the second team in Los Angeles. Yep. They still are that, and maybe deep down in their psyche they still see themselves as sort of the stepchild of Los Angeles. This all started to me in Game 5 in Houston, where I think we both thought that the Clippers would close them out, and the Clippers flat out quit in that game at halftime. To me, they fell behind 63-48 to a team that was led by James Harden, who had some sort of virus or some sort of, I'm not sure how bad it was, but there was iffy whether he was even going to play in the game, and he had a triple-double. And all of a sudden, this Rockets team started to gain a little life and a little hope and maybe a little bit of momentum, though you couldn't see it for almost 3 quarters last night. They still think now they can beat this team when the chips are down. And once again, what I've been telling you all along about this team reared its ugly head last night. There's something missing deep in the psyche of this team. I don't know what you want to define it as, basketball character, basketball intangibles. It's something that swirls around the 2 superstars, Chris Paul and Blake Griffin. And to your point, Stephen A., in the 4th quarter last night, Blake went 0 for again. That's an 0 for 5. He had one of those games against the Spurs in the previous round where he just got blanked in the 4th quarter. He's too good to get blanked in the 4th quarter. I'm sorry, you can't come up with a big goose egg. And if you're Blake Griffin, and we saw him score at will, and I agree with your strategic point about how the Rockets started to play him, but still, he's Blake Griffin, and there are nights when I think he is the best player in basketball. And Chris Paul, here's the great irony of what happened at the end of the game last night. Do you realize after trailing by 19 late in the 3rd quarter, if Chris Paul at the buzzer hadn't hit a one-legged, off-balance three-pointer, they would have lost by 15 instead of 12. Think about that. They lost by 12. I don't know how that's possible. At home, to blow that big a lead, they didn't just lose at the buzzer by 1. They lost by 12 that should have been by 15. But Chris Paul hit a 3, and at that point, he was 1 out of 6. So he wasn't much better than Blake. 0 for 5, Blake. Chris was 1 for 6, but he went up 2 for 7 because he hit just an out-of-the-back-end shot. Yeah, at the buzzer that cut it down to 12. That's just pathetic, and it's something's wrong with the team, and it's not Doc to me. It's not. I love Doc. I think he's right there with Coach Popovich's 1-2-2-1 as the 2 best coaches in basketball. I don't know what else he can do. He doesn't have the luxury of the bench that Kevin McHale went to, because like a Jason Terry, Stephen A., he just let Jason Terry run the show down the stretch in place of James Harden. Now that, like you said, that is gutsy, man, because you're risking that you might lose. You remember what you said at the first of the series? Maybe James Harden was pouting a little bit because he didn't get the MVP. Well, will he pout now because he didn't play him down the stretch of such a monumental, epic comeback?
They asked him
the Rockets
about that. He said, I just made a gamble. He said, I didn't care. He made a gamble.
We
did,
and
it worked.
We both love Doc Rivers.
Yep.
We think he's phenomenal. We think he's a master motivator. We understand what he did in winning the title in Boston. You can't get around that. But remember, he was coaching the Orlando Magic when they were up 3-1 on Detroit in 2003 when he had Tracy McGrady. They lost that series. Remember, he was up against Orlando in 2010. He lost that series. Remember, he was up 3-2 in the NBA Finals when the Lakers came back and beat him. He's lost closeout games before. And so when you look at it from that perspective, again, the greatness of Doc Rivers is not to be questioned. But in the interest of fairness, we have to point out that there are times when the job hasn't gotten done in terms of closing the deal. And he's going to have to do it this time around. And it's a little bit different because, again, you questioned whether he had the right team in Orlando because he had Tracy McGrady, but he didn't have much else because Grant Hill was never healthy. You're up, even though you lose a 3-2 lead, you went up 3-2 in the finals, but you are going up against Kobe and Gasol and them, and you had to go back to L.A. for 2 games in the Staples Center because of the 2-3-2 format in the NBA Finals. We understand that. But the flip side to all of that is that these are the Clippers. And when you're up 3-1, understand what transpired. You gave away Game 5 because you knew you had Game 6 on your home floor. So the priority and the level of urgency that needed to be there, Doc Rivers admitted, wasn't there. And when he admitted that it wasn't there, he pointed the finger at himself because he said he needed to do a better job of getting them ready. Fair enough. Always appreciate him manning up because that's the kind of man he is. Great man. Then he went to Game 6. You got a 19-point lead in the third quarter. You are running them out of the building. Jamal Crawford's hitting shots. J.J. Redick's hitting shots. Matt Barnes is being the antagonist that he is. DeAndre Jordan hit 4 of 6 free throws. A miracle. 66% from the free throw line. Okay, and Blake Griffin, along with Chris Paul, were en route to having about 28 points at that particular juncture. We talk about the third quarter, okay? And then somehow, some way, there's no way to get around this collapse to stop the bleeding. J.J. Redick can't get a shot. Matt Barnes can't get a shot. Jamal Crawford can't take a shot. But it's all about Blake Griffin and Chris Paul, and they're not making it. And you're talking about people thinking that the eradication of the curse had arrived because the Clippers had never even advanced to the Western Conference Finals. All of this hype and hoopla surrounding this buzz surrounded this team. Y'all have this kind of collapse, and James Harden isn't even on the floor when it happens.
Exactly.
Oh, my
That's crazy.
God.
All right.
Let me tell you something. They have to. Look, they
Final
better
point.
win Game 7.
Go ahead.
They better win Game 7.
Make it at a wrap.
Last point. I was stunned by two things that happened here. It wasn't just that they were missing shots. They missed 15 of their last 16 shots, did the Clippers. They weren't just lip-out shots like they're snake-bitten. But you're right. But on the shot missing, they were awful misses. The quality of the misses was high, like awful, like Brick City. Lob City went to Brick City.
They were
That's
nervous.
what happened. And you're right. On defense, I have rarely seen an opposing team get so many easy baskets. Where they quit was defending, because this team can defend when it feels like it. It did not feel like it until it was way too late.
Game 7, gentlemen. We will discuss who wins or who you think will win. You kind of gave away what you thought.
I don't know yet.
That's what you said. You just don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know. That's really where it is right now. You just don't know. So we'll talk about it a little later on in the show. Did you guys see the other game? Well, obviously Stephen A. saw it because it was legit. He was there. Chicago Bulls had a chance to force a Game 7. They did not.
He didn't see it. He was talking.
I know he was socializing.
Yeah.
I saw him in the background talking to some stars. I don't know, but whatever. We'll talk about that dead end after the break.